Pastelo. Akele Yuha. Onkia okte. Del hier niet akushnish ni Woglakapi na. Hel lakota. Wopche. Wocekiye Treaty Eyapi hier niet Woglakapi. Oleshwanale. Takukule Wocekiye law enforcement courts elke lenecha. Ele Woglakapi. Doke tukachale woyukcha. Du hapke shahateshenai. Ele eubna. Yuptumtum kilena Woglakapi. I want to welcome each and every one of you who aren't here this morning. We had some of the treaty people here who talked about the treaty and the need to address the future and where the treaty fits into the picture, strengthening our Constitution, or going back and redeveloping a form of governance that more specifically includes Woglakapi and the values and the virtues and the philosophy of what our ancestry had and the applicability to today as to how we might put the Woglakapi into an updated constitution and bylaws so that Tioshpai and Tiwahe and family things are more in there and more of the values of compassion and respect and whatever else Woglakapi stands for can be incorporated into our Constitution. And I'm going to ask Sarah Reynolds here to kick us off. She had a week of forums last week regarding safety, and I know she's pretty well organized as to the things that she wanted to do and was able to accomplish through the forums that she sponsored here last week. But our aim here is to take what's been discussed here, and you all know your areas better than others, and as an institution here, we've been charged with defining and redefining who we are as a Sicangu Oyate. And this addresses every aspect of life of who we are, whether it's culture, whether it's education, economics, governance, family, youth, elders, housing, judicial, energy, technology, transportation. Kind of in a lot of ways, looking at what's needed as kind of pretty much of an intellectual and an academic review and analysis of the tribal, federal, state, county, municipal relations that we have. We've had 50 years as an institution to study and to prepare under the paradigm that we operate on. Now we want to cinch that up and really basically take a look at what it is that we need to do to come together in partnerships and a collaboration as to who we want to be and who we need to be, and not as who somebody else wants us to be. We're at the crossroads in listening to other presenters here this week in the things that they're seeing and they want to do. It is timely that we set up a process where all the stakeholders are involved, whether you're a professional or you're resident of the Oyate and may not have a position of service or responsibility to anyone else except yourself. And certainly as yourself, we all know that we're all involved, whoever we are, whether it's ancestry or whether we're addressing future unborn. We have it in us, in our blood, in our DNA, to continue to strengthen the Woglakapi that our ancestry stood on, and to take and develop a philosophy within ourselves. If it is to be, it is up to me. Define the function of what it is that we feel we can bring to the table as individuals, as organizations, as programs, as tribal government, and then to create the form or the structure best suited to carry those out, so that we don't have a Newt Gingrich appearing on CNN television and talking about the lack of a strong tribal policy in this country, and therefore Indian country is suffering, and have him stand there and talk about low educational achievement, bad health, high incarceration rates, no employment, poverty. As Charlie Colomb said before he passed in the spirit world, how dare he? That's our role and responsibility, to define who we are and to articulate who we want to be and not somebody else. And that's what we want to do. We're at the crossroads of our existence, institutionally as an Oyate. And we want to sit down in partnership with each other. I was up in Toronto, Canada here a while back at the world's largest educational conference in a country, or in the world, where over 4,000 indigenous educators sat and talked about their future. And I was invited to speak, and I was also given an honorary doctorate degree there. But people, especially the gentleman from Australia, recognized Sicangu Oyate, Stanley University, and sang an honor song in our behalf. And they liked our message of talking about really overhauling who we are and showcasing this and taking it across regionally, nationally, and globally. In fact, several come up and asked us to host an international meeting here because they themselves wanted to do something like this, but didn't always have the timing or the opportunity to address this. We met in Mexico City a few years ago. I was invited to address the presidents of historical black colleges and universities. And we were invited to a reception to recognized tribal college presidents at the First Lady's home in Mexico, President Vicente Fox residence. And there was a delegation that approached us and said, "Can we come in with you? We have some concerns, and we'd like to ask the First Lady to help us." So we took a delegation from, and my memory might fade me a bit here, but from the Chiapa tribal nation there, living in northeastern, I think, South America. And I was really amazed to hear what their story is. Much like ours, decades, if not a century ago. The fact that they wake up continually to gunfire from these military bases that are close by. And they talked about the difficulty of coming through those two military bases on the way to Mexico City. And the story that they told to the First Lady was that, first of all, these soldiers would come into camp, and they had every girl 12 years and older impregnated on their tribal homelands. And they were appealing to the First Lady to stop this. Secondly, educationally, while they thanked the First Lady and the state or the government for offering an education on their reservation up to the 8th grade, but they themselves did fundraising and raised $6,000 to build an extra classroom onto their school, and could the First Lady approve a 9th grade education for their tribal nation. You know, when you're in the midst of seeing that and hearing that, you're very thankful for what we have here in Sicangu country, an educational system that has the opportunity to offer bachelor's and master's programs, knowing that a fellow tribal nation to our south here is wanting a 9th grade education in their tribal homelands. So certainly we've been blessed, and give thanks to the founders of St. Ignace University, Stanley Redbird Sr., who created this institution to be the vehicle to address our future. And being at the crossroads now, we now want to define and develop and articulate this next chapter in our institution and tribal nations' lives. We have so much to offer. We have so much intellect and ability here on the Rosebud that we should not have to be on CNN with Newt Gingrich telling the world that on the Rosebud things are so bad that they lead the world in suicides proportionate to their population. That's very disheartening and a tremendous challenge to who we are as a people and as an institution. And our hope is that this week's forums will take us to the next step, and we'll have follow-up meetings where we come to the table time and time again until we're content with having a document in front of us with prayer and ceremony that addresses every aspect of our life and sets the direction and the tone for future livelihood on the Sicangu Oyate. That's our calling. I passed out a little document here that has a story from myself. I'm not campaigning for anything, but I want you to read that because it kind of lays out who this institution is and the historical development and the fact that a gentleman by the name of Rick Williams, who was president of the American Indian College Fund, talked about tribal colleges, universities, shaping the future of Indian country. That's where we're at. That's our calling. Thank you for being here and for listening. And we'll ask Sarah to come forward and kick off the afternoon session. Pilama Apelo, Astelo.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Uncle Lionel, for inviting me to be a part of Wocekiye University's Founders Day forums. I was not expecting to get up here and say anything. I thought I was just going to come and participate. But I'm happy to stand here and greet all of you. I am the tribe's lead grant writer. I work for Sicangu Resource Development. Our program is responsible for writing grants on behalf of the tribe's 638 programs and other standalone programs of the tribe. When I first started working with Sicangu Resource Development, we wrote grants across the board for health programs for anybody for the tribe. And I'm going to say around 2011, the BIA stepped in and said that we could no longer write grants for health programs or alcohol and drug programs or anything because those were on the IHS side of the 638. So we kind of got, just kind of had some lines drawn for us that were never there before. I'm actually a graduate of Wocekiye University. I was one of the first nursing school graduates of this university. And I began my career with the Rosebud Sioux tribe working for the CHR program. I was the LPN for the program, and I went out and did community outreach with elders and with teens. And through that work, I wrote my first grant with assistance from the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board. And that kind of got me into a whole different career path where I'm a grant writer now, so I'm no longer a nurse, but I do hold a nursing degree. So it's kind of crazy, but with my education and with where my career has led me, it's kind of opened my eyes to see how all of our services that we provide to the Rosebud Sioux tribe are commingled. Everything affects something else. It's like a domino or a ripple effect. We could do something on a health side and it's going to affect something on the justice side. You know, so I found some loopholes to where I can help write behavioral health grants or reentry grants and things like that because they benefit our justice system. And so through my work, I started to see that previously there was very little collaboration going on within this tribe. Programs were operating within silos. They had services that were being provided but weren't being shared with the other programs that provided like services. And so it kind of was hurting our people. And so we started to look at it from a different angle and started to bring our partners together. And I'm really happy to say that over the past 2 years, we've been able to bring the justice programs together to where they work together in a way they've never done before. And it's really encouraging to see that work, be fruitful. And while we haven't been too successful yet in being able to get grants here, because we're still planning, there's a lot of planning that has to go into this work. And for this year, we apply every year for a coordinated tribal assistance solicitation grant. And that's funded through the Department of Justice. And that is made up of 10 grant applications. There's 10 grant opportunities in one application. And so it creates a unique situation for this tribe where it kind of forces us to work together, to coordinate everything, and look at all of the services that we have available to us and try to come up with a plan that says, well, how do we use what's already existing and use this money to enhance those services or improve services to our people? So over the years, or this past 2 years since we've really been working well together, we started to say, well, we're always submitting these grants, and we think we know everything. Even though we work in these fields and the people who work in these fields are professionals, we don't always know everything. We don't know what the people want or what the people need all the time. And so I contacted Lionel and Phil Baird at the Sicangu University and asked them to co-host the first ever Rosebud Sioux Tribe Public Safety Summit this year. And we had 75 people attend. I was hoping for 400 or something like that, but it's our first year, and while poorly attended, we were able to get a lot of valuable information. The intent of us doing this was to have that opportunity to ask the public, what do you see are as the Rosebud Sioux Tribe's main public safety issues that we should be addressing? And all of the justice programs were here, and I don't know, it was really a good day. I felt we started on some work, and after lunch everybody left. And so I said, next year we're going to feed after we do all the work. So, but we started some work. We conducted a public safety survey. We had it available online. We also had it available on paper here. And we had 138 responses. And so our goal was to use this survey to guide our work for this year's CTAS grant, so we can see what the public's opinion was of the problems that we need to be addressing as your justice system. And I'm the writer, so I just kind of help coordinate everything, but these guys really are the ones who are the think tanks behind everything, and I just kind of put together what they want me to put together. So I coordinated everything for them, and but the results of we do have the results of the survey, and if I knew I was going to be up here, I would have brought it and shared it with all of you. But of the 138 respondents, people are saying that our drug and alcohol problems on this reservation are our biggest problem. And I couldn't agree more. When you look at everything, our violent crime, everything, all of these other things that are occurring here are all a result of our drug and alcohol problem that we have going on here and have had going on here for a very long time. And so our goal at SRD is to help our justice system achieve success by reducing some of the problems we have with drug and alcohol abuse. And we can only do that through collaboration, by working together, and by looking at everything that we have available here, even our people. Our people are our biggest strengths, and sometimes we forget that. And I don't know what else to say, but I'm just really encouraged by the work that we're starting to do, and I see our people coming together, our leaders, our program directors, and I'm really encouraged, and I know that we may not experience all the success in our grants this year, but maybe next year, maybe we'll get 1 or 2 this year, and maybe we'll get more next year because we'll be more together. We'll have everything together, and it'll look better on paper. So another good thing that we have going on with this year's grant is I was able to get the Todd County High School JAG students. There are 4 of them, and they're actually going to be writing one of our purpose areas for us. There's an opportunity in there for a tribal youth program. And when I introduced this idea to the National Criminal Justice Training Center, who was actually here on site, she said, oh, I got goosebumps. She is so excited because no other tribe has ever had its youth actually write a grant. And to me, it's important. To me, I look at it as a learning opportunity for our kids to see what actually goes into writing a grant. We get a lot of criticism because we're not always successful, but it takes partnerships, and it takes a lot of work to write a winning grant, and especially in a very highly competitive field of grant making, it's really hard to be successful. And I'm just glad we got Janet on our side. She's been successful for the Rosebud Sioux tribe in recent years and bringing a lot of funding to White Buffalo Calf and other areas. But we all work together. We try to work together to make sure that these gaps in services are filled, and so we can improve services and safety here for our people. And I don't know who you want me to introduce next, but I can see Robert sitting over there, the tribe's judiciary. He's on judiciary chairman and tribal council representative. So.
Good afternoon. Ja tona kiela kole una na karabechi Yuha chaska wat petuglechens chante washte na pechuza pelo. Na lechel tohan manija ho up charge na lila Wicawotapi lila takuku ota slowam shni heniu hashna letong Google stam church na Yuha slowam. Na letaku wale wichona jinglele pijuta shitonle lila oka reghe lila wonepcheke. Now, I know that all of you guys are pretty fluent in Lakota, so I think I'll go ahead and translate in English here. First of all, I'm just like Sarah. I never expected to give up and stand up and give a speech today. Wilma really fooled me. She said, come to SGU, there's going to be a dinner. So that's why I'm here. But first of all, my name is Robert Rattlingleaf. I'm a council representative for Horse Creek Community, and I'm currently the chairman of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe's Judiciary Committee. It's an oversight committee. It's a legislative body for the entire judicial branch of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. And I've been working for the tribe in the field of law enforcement, and I started working for the tribe back in 1977. So I've been associated with the tribe for 42 years now. And what was really fortunate for me is the fact that in a judiciary environment, I went to full circle. First of all, I started as a law enforcement officer, enforcing the tribe's law and order. Then I became a probation officer at the tribal court for 16 years. We defined the law, we interpreted the law, we enforced the law. And when I worked as a probation officer, it gave me a really insight on not only from the judiciary perspective, but from the Oyate's perspective. And then now, being the council rep and representing the entire people, now I see the other side of the coin. And what really disturbs me is the fact that sometimes we address issues, and last time we had a seminar, I brought this up, that when we discuss things, we got to look at things from all perspectives. And sometimes we have a tendency to just read the book by the cover. We don't know what's inside. And as Sarah alluded to, we accomplished a lot, but we're still way behind. And there's two issues that I really am concerned about, and one is that it's difficult to make headway when you're lacking resources. As a legislator, that's one of the things that really disturbs me, is the fact that there's goals and there's And there's goals that need to be accomplished, but it's difficult to accomplish without the resources. Every aspect of the judiciary branch you look at, there's always that demand for more personnel, more money. And it's unfortunate that we have to have the Muzaska to operate. And what really encouraged me is the fact that, we have a law and order code, but one of my goals is to find out how are we going to incorporate our way of life into the current law and order code. This law and order code that we adopted and are currently following are designed by the Washikyu. We're not Washikyus. And it's really difficult for us because for 150 years, we've been oppressed people. We've been oppressed culture, tribe. And what I mean by that is we're not scared of being incarcerated. We've been incarcerated all our lives. So when you send somebody to jail, you're not teaching them nothing. You're just hardening them. And the way I look at it from the legislative perspective, that was an oversight that I missed all these years of working for the tribe. Now I look at it from the Oyate's perspective. When we live in a depressed socioeconomic conditions that we have on a reservation, it's really difficult to have a successful law and order. And my way of thinking, I started looking at the other side. And what I mean by that is now I'm looking at the Oyate's perspective. And it's sometimes depressing as a legislator that we're trying to accomplish something and it's difficult to do. Incarcerating people is not the answer, people. And I agree that we need law and order to have a healthy and safe environment. And I, as many of you, probably agree that there are some people that need to be kept from society. But far too many Lakotas are being incarcerated. And we're not teaching them nothing. And what I hope to accomplish is, before my time on a council, what I'd like to see is to incorporate some kind of alternative sentencing in our judicial system. We could teach people and hold people accountable by making them accountable by working in our communities. But I looked at having people put behind bars is not the answer. Chalena Hocoka kelena uyak tegena tokes kelena ichuk ukichilena yoche eglonka hene chal toka Woglakapi the nish wonkak the kha. I got to remember, folks, this is not the tribal council. I could go on all day, so I just got to remember and give everybody a chance. Once you give me a chance, I keep going. And I had to be prepared for this because my Tashi Lionel will he'll attest to that. When you're on a tribal council, you go somewhere, you got to be prepared to speak. On the way over, I ran a couple of red lights trying to figure out what to say. I said if they ask me to talk, I don't know what to say, so I better start thinking about something. But in closing, people, that's my comment. That's what I really like to see. I would like to see us revise our law and order code, where somewhere we start putting our way of life into these law and order codes. And again, I'm going to repeat it because it's really important to me that incarcerating people ain't the way. And I'll repeat, over 150 years we've been incarcerated. We can't be people that we're not. We could try as hard as we may, we never could become other people. We're Lakotas in heart. And we're having a hard time because we're trying to adapt to the white culture. Lakota honchap, do we need to There's no way you're going to get the Indian out of us Lakotas. So I think that it's high time that we start changing directions and start looking for ways to incorporate our Lakota way of life into our judicial system, our law and order code. Yuha chantea washte choosam naha have a good day and have a safe trip home. Hawopilalo.
Robert Rastelo, Wopila. I started my education in the community that raised Robert, Horse Creek. Used to be a Horse Creek day school there. That was my first 4 years. I still go back and I stop there. And I sit there and I reminisce and I give thanks for what I learned there and the friends that I knew there. Unfortunately, they're mostly in the spirit world, but I continue to call upon them. And I can go back to that school and look at a spot and see myself in the things that I did there. And I was involved there. Very sacred, spiritual place. Thank you. Who wants to be the, we can go around the horn here. Somebody here on the left side want to be the next speaker? Go ahead and introduce yourself and what have you.
Wocekiye Eyapi, Ikiciyuskinpi. My name is Misku Petit. I'm the administrator of the Woglakapi. As far as Woglakapi is concerned, we started our operations back in 2005, so we've been open for quite some time. And I have been very fortunate to have participated in the Stanley University. I'm a graduate. Had the opportunity to come back and take some courses for my master's degree and even teach a few classes for the Human Services Department. So I'm forever grateful for this institution and all that it offers to our community. And in saying that, when I began my work at the Woglakapi and looking at what the planning team wanted and what the tribal leadership wanted, it was obvious that the goals were aligned with this institution. And unfortunately, when you get into the idea of incarcerating young people, that's a difficult decision to make. And I got a chance to see the Woglakapi grow through its infancy and up into where we are today. And I'm very appreciative of the institution or the organization that we have. We are living up to our mission. We take every opportunity to find teachable moments for the youth who we serve. We take great care and caution when we're considering which juveniles are going to have to be involved in that experience. I think if you look at the history of juvenile detention, you'll see that it sways back and forth. And there was time periods, even here in the state of South Dakota, where young people were taken to boot camps. And there's a lot of studies on juvenile justice, and there's tons of information. And there's always that question of what can we do to help our children? What can we do to help them succeed? And it's a question that confronts us every day in our facility, and our staff, most of whom who've worked there for around 15 years, very respectful, intelligent, professional staff. We have very low turnover rate. When I look at the mission of the organization, there's that mention that, you know, we want to integrate culture. We want to teach our young people about their history, their language, and you know, there's a lot of need for that, and I have seen many occasions when our young people are also very thirsty for that knowledge. We often are looking for volunteers. If any of you are interested, contact us. We could sure use the help. We always don't have funding to support that, but sometimes we do. So if you need gas money to get there, we might be able to figure something out. But we have a broad range of people in the community who are assets that can bring knowledge and information into our facility for our young people. And I'd encourage you to reach out to us and try to bring that to us. And if you know somebody that would be interested, that has some time, you know, we've really had a lot of success with bringing elders in and having them spend some time talking to our young people. We have had a lot of success with some of the grants that we've implemented. At this time, we're only sitting on one grant that's close to becoming complete, and that grant pertains to these policies and laws called the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And these laws, they don't even apply to us, essentially. Tribes are exempt from them. So, but when we took a look at the grant, we decided that we were going to put an application in for it because we have a lot of issues out in the community with sexual assault and those types of crimes. And so we have a lot of people who are victims of that, especially our young people. And that's partially why they're misbehaving and causing themselves to come to our facility frequently. They're acting out because of the pain and suffering that they're having a hard time dealing with. And so we have been going through this process of implementing this grant, and it has really enhanced our program in many facets, and we've really increased upon like a safety net for our young people, and also an environment that provides our staff direction to prevent and detect and deter anything that can happen within institutions like ours, or any jail or prison. And so we're very proud of that. We had also had at one time received a grant from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention to provide counseling services to our young people. And we have had some really good people out there that done some amazing work. Dr. Patricia Arnshell Hill, she's currently the mental health director for the Rosebud IHS. When she was out there, she really helped us to implement sweat lodges and ceremonies within the program. And we were able to get a high volume of those going while she was there. We still have sweat lodges. Sometimes if we stop doing sweat lodges, the kids will let us know that, hey, when's the next sweat, you know, so we get on it. We kind of need some rocks right now if anyone wants to bring us some rocks. I think Royal City will bring us some rocks. So, but we have rocks and wood, and with a lot of that stuff, I was just talking to this reporter yesterday from France, and he was really interested in what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And it dawned on me that a lot of what we do isn't really funded. Fortunately, when you look at the grants, there's that respectful communication in there that they want to be able to fund a lot of that stuff, but then they still have areas of red tape. So, Wicawotapi, we've done tremendous work over the last 19 years, 15 years. What did I say, 2005? What is it, 2019? 14 years. And I kind of look at it as, you know, we're up and running now, kind of real strong, like a child, you know, like a teenager. And we've made an impact, made a difference in the lives of many young people in our community, and we've even, over the course of our operations, gotten better at what we do, especially with culture. And another thing that I'd like to say about implementing Lakota culture and programs is something that we really discount, is the fact that you know, many of our staff, you know, sometimes it doesn't take a grant or a funding or something to get what we want into our facility. Our staff bring that in every day. They're role models, they're mentors, they're there to listen to our young people and provide guidance. And so that's one thing that we're very fortunate to have there in our facility. So if anyone has any questions about the Wicawotapi, I would take a few now, or you can also ask me off to the side, or you can always call the center and get a hold of somebody, and we would sure love to answer any questions. We have a website and a Facebook page. But we are operating well. You know, there's, in every facility in law enforcement, they're always going to say that you're short-staffed. That's just a trick of the game to try to get more money. But at the same time, you know, we've been efficient in trying to do our mission with what we have. So that's about all I want to say right now, and Woglakapi.
Jim, you want the mic? I have a gentleman here that's very involved, but I know he's fighting time constraints, but we'll ask him up here to take the mic and give us the benefit of what he stands for.
Well, I was trying to sneak out real quick like and not get caught, but that didn't happen. I have to go back to work, but anyways, thank you, Lionel, for asking me to say a few things. And I like what Robert had to say, as usual. He thinks things out for a long time, and then he, you know, lets loose with that. So I appreciate that he's that way. First of all, Takiape Chateashte and Apechuzapilo. Machapi James Iron Shell. And, you know, this is a real nice place to have a talk. You know, and I think we should have a lot more talks, especially about the kind of things that affect our people and the way that our nation is progressing. You know, we've been challenged for some time now. It's not just been recently. It's been since we've had contact with the Washichu and, you know, fought them and wound up in the situation that we find ourselves in today. And it's trying to find some kind of balance that we can use in our everyday life to follow up to one set of rules, and we have another set that we use that we're supposed to be implementing in our everyday life and amongst our people and our culture. So trying to find that even keel, that even road to walk on, it's pretty difficult nowadays for a lot of different people, and especially for our youth. You know, there was I would have to say that our grandfathers had a much easier way than we have now. They weren't, you know, distracted, very focused individuals. They had a very clean path to the Creator, and they had not so many obstacles put in their way that our children find themselves confronted with today. Everything from gangs to drugs to alcohol, or just a general misunderstanding of their responsibilities as a family member, as a man, as a warrior, and as a leader of the nation. If it's a girl, woman, and man, they're both like that today. So, you know, all of these things that we're dealing with, our courts, our corrections, JDC, and adults, you know, it's a difficult task, and it's too bad that we have to implement them, and we have to be the kind of way that we are nowadays. It's really kind of hard for our kids, you know, that they have to experience some of these things that they have put themselves through. Just like each one of us, you know, when you mess up, and you know, probably might wind up, you know, might cost you something, you know, might cost you your freedom for a little bit, might cost you some money out of your pocket, you know, might cost you your boyfriend. Just kidding. You know, the way that we need to, I think, you know, that we need to look at things nowadays is to change our whole perception on the way that we train our children. And that has to come from the family. But in a lot of instances here at home, the way it is nowadays, they don't have that opportunity to train those children the way that they should be trained. You know, I spoke with a lot of elders. I spoke with a lot of, fortunate to speak with a lot of medicine people. Got a chance to listen to Frank Foolscroll. Got to pray with him. Gentleman by the name of Matthew King. His name was Noble Redman. Maybe you remember that. And many others, you know, Martin Highbear, Robert Steed, different healers that we used to look up to and could count on. My Uncle Leonard, different ones. My Hocoka family is the Two Dogs family from Evergreen. Used to set up altar for him and sing for him and stuff like that, and just got a chance to visit with my mom and dad, his mom and dad and stuff, and you know, really have a nice understanding of the way that things used to be and see that transition to how they are now. But they used to tell me about that, the way that our children used to be raised. There was a ceremony that began with everything. Every single child at birth, there was a ceremony that began. And that ceremony is supposed to follow that child all the way through his adult life, a never-ending circle of prayer, never-ending circle of accomplishment and thought. But it was not without a price, without some sacrifice that they had to make. So even when the child was born and the ceremony was made for him, to up to about 5 years old, the male child and the female child would be together. They would be looked after primarily by the aunties, by the unchis. I believe myself, when I look at it, I believe that the reason the boys were like that is so that they could cultivate that compassion and that caringness that our female relatives show. But then after a period of like around 5, 6 years old, they would go over to their uncles and their older brothers, and then it was their turn to train them how to be a responsible man, how to be a responsible warrior, how to fulfill the obligations that the Creator, that Wakan gave that person, and He gave our people. So there's a series of ceremonies, there's a series of understanding, a series of things that each one of our people had to accomplish in order to take his rightful place amongst our people and to find a proper way, proper path for him to continue on and be a whole human being. I don't see that happening any longer. And I believe that the result of that ultimately is the dysfunction that you see amongst our people today. There's a set of laws that came along with our creation that were given, cultural laws, spiritual laws, traditional laws, that served us well for the time that we were created up until we had first contact. And, there are some of us that still try to believe that way, to practice and experience that way, to look at that way, but I don't see it as being successful like it should be. We have challenges before us, we have language challenges. Not a lot of people are fluent speakers any longer. Not a lot of people can even understand what anybody's saying. And that's in itself a really difficult thing. It's a failure that we need to correct, if at all possible. And within our language itself lies the key, that seed of knowledge to understand the laws that Wakan gave us, that White Buffalo Calf Woman gave to us, that the pipe has tied with it, that our societies have. So that's something that we have to deal with, and we have to find a way around and a path to incorporate those things in. And part of that, I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I'm the vice for the Judiciary Committee for the tribe. But like Robert was saying, we took a pretty similar path in becoming involved in those special areas of interest. I went to the military, and then I got out and wound up going into law enforcement. And I did that for some time. And after that, then wound up eventually moving into the corrections, which I enjoyed, and then back into law enforcement again, and and then just doing kind of these things that I've been doing with the Judiciary Committee for the past 6 years, and it's enjoyable work. I like to be able to help people and to talk to people and to see people, and a lot of the things that I've seen when it comes to our people and the things that we allow or the things that we don't allow is a lack of understanding, primarily, of our laws, and for the most part, they're all Washichu laws that have been written. Some we haven't even written them ourselves. We've sought to take and codify the laws of the white man from the state of South Dakota all the way through the federal system. And that original thought, that original intent, that original language that we used to have, we don't display that any longer. But we have a lot of people that are very knowledgeable, that believe that way, and I'd like to see the discussion continue. You know, my personal priority has been trying to rejuvenate and bring back to life our warrior societies. There was about 7 years ago, I had a chance to visit with a gentleman named Wallace Bearchum. He's the one of the headmen criers for the Tokalas for the Northern Cheyenne. And I personally believe that if we had a chance to re-implement our societies in a manner fitting for today, that we could start to get a handle on a lot of the things that are going on in our communities, which ultimately affects our nation. So with this conversation, we had a visit, and they were saying, and we've kind of done some research, that our Tokalas down here came from the Northern Cheyenne, and they still have their songs, they still have their positions, they still have their societal ways, and they're recognized amongst their people, amongst their tribal government. They give them a place. And I was asking him different things like that. He says, well, why don't we share that with you again, since you guys don't have your songs or your positions any longer? So, well, that would be really nice. So that invitation's always has been there since I've spoken with him. I think that's something that we should take advantage of. I think that would be a start on creating a path for our children to follow, which we used to have and which we used to implement. So right now, what's the role model that the children in our homes have to look up to? You know, that's, you know, I want to be like you. And they got some kid out there with a red handkerchief sitting in his pocket, or a blue bandana on the other side of his pocket, or somebody out there stumbling around that doesn't know where he's going. You know, that's the kind of role models that a lot of our children have to pattern after or see. And those other ones, they take advantage of that. And they actively recruit and destroy our future generation to come. So I just wanted to, just kind of wanted to say that, you know. I know there's been a lot of work. Janet's been doing a lot of work. The rest of the tribe has been doing a lot of work trying to revise our law and order code with some of the thoughts that Lionel had about incorporating Woglakapi into those. It's kind of difficult to do. We need a lot more work done in that area. We need a lot more help from many more interested people, you know. But I'd like to say thank you to you, Lionel, and SGU for hosting these forums. They're always informative. They're always make me feel good after I've been here. So I hope, and sorry I got to leave, but I hope the discussion is fruitful and that you bring something out of this that will benefit our people and our nation. And then, you know, one other thing I wanted to say was that we had a terrible tragedy here last week. And those are the kind of things that we need to concentrate on, not ever having occur again. And it's difficult with the way that things are in modern society nowadays. So, but I hope each one of you have a nice day, and may the Great Spirit look out over you, give you good health, help, and happiness. Thank you.
Jimopila Piloyapilo. Thank you. Going around the horn here, who wants to be the next speaker here? Got some powerful, strong ladies sitting over here, and they're pointing at each other to see which one will come forward here. Whichever one it is, we know that we're in good hands. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Oh, there's Janet. I was trying to go after her. Nope, she's waving me. Okay, I guess. So I'll start with my little traditional introduction. Hamitaki Eyapi, Yuha chante washte nape choose api. Lindsay Compton emachi api na la kolchaje ishna ewia. Na Sicangu makoche emataha eash. Ojijinka Otroahe mataha na Inawaeki Marty Jones na Atewaeki Harold Compton na Wana Patesa Wia Omashke Ikiciyuskinpi Executive Director Ewawashi Echamu. So I'm really trying to practice working on the revitalization of Lakota language, and as we've heard earlier, and we're well aware that a lot of our traditional teachings and philosophies are within that language. So anytime that I get to practice and use that and bring that forward, which is bringing that into our day-to-day, our modern operations and our context. So I kind of was able, you know what, a couple weeks ago we found this really cool resource over at White Buffalo Calf Women's Society. And it was from Charlotte Blackout. So I made a couple copies, and that's kind of around the room. And if you didn't get one, or if you want one, we can get one to you. And it talked about women's roles, traditionally, how she spoke on it. And so that's a great resource that I wanted to come and share today. So in thinking of at White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, coming into the organization, you know, the transition, and I sort of just have been there really recently since November. But for myself coming forward, and I know for the majority, if not all of our staff, really see that as a modern place for a women's society to be held in an organizational context. And so we're continuing to redefine and discuss those traditional ideas and how we can bring them into how we implement services to our relatives. In studying different ideas of organizations and philosophy and what guides us, I brought the policy here, and I'm going to read from it the philosophy of the society. And I don't know where this came from, the history of this, or who wrote this, but it is so well written. And going through my undergrad and then my MTech program at University of Minnesota, Duluth, having the chance to study locally, regionally, nationally, different successful Native American organizations, this is some of the most beautifully written policy that I've come across, because it does incorporate Woglakapi. It does incorporate different traditional values. And so I wanted to showcase that here before I kind of start asking for money from the tribe. I'm just kidding, but I'm going to. Slide that right in. And so this is directly from the policy. Many winters past, a Wakan woman, the white buffalo calf, gave us the sacred pipe to the Lakota people. The pipe represents the unity of all people and all things in the universe. Through the pipe, peace may come to all who understand and follow the meaning. The understanding would be in both their minds and their hearts. The White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, Inc. strives to follow the teaching of the White Buffalo Calf woman. The goals are peace, understanding, and quality of life for all people. Only if there is peace and strength within each of our hearts can we hope to share this with others. By learning more and caring deeply about ourselves and others through yearning for and working towards growth, by giving and receiving knowledge, concern, and inspiration, the vision of Pate Sawi may become the path of all people. White Buffalo Calf Women's Society recognizes that violence against women is not a random state, but is in fact the system of behaviors and tactics used to obtain and maintain power and control over women, whether as an individual or as a group. White Buffalo Calf Women's Society believes that violence against indigenous Lakota women is not traditional to our culture and our lifeway teachings. We believe it has roots in an imposed and institutionalized system that was designed to maintain control over us as a people after genocide failed. And it has failed. We do not define violence against indigenous women as a problem within just your personal relationships or as a pathology of an individual perpetrator. But again, it is the perpetuated and maintained through society and institutions. That's the same dynamic that perpetuates other forms of oppression, like racism, classism, ageism, homophobia, able-bodyism, adultism, etc. We are committed to providing shelter, safety, and advocacy for individuals victimized by violence. We recognize the necessity of a multifaceted approach, the need to develop an effective partnership with systems in our community, such as health, criminal justice, and other institutions. At the same time, we recognize that creating an appropriate systems response may or may not make for significant enough change to stop violence against women. Therefore, we are also dedicated to exploring and creating actions that will move us towards social transformation that will allow equity for women. We actively seek methods and processes that will facilitate nonviolent human interaction. In all actions, White Buffalo Calf Women's Society shall seek a balance between the individual, family, and community, and also the Rosebud Sioux tribe. White Buffalo Calf Women's Society shall not engage in practices that serve to undermine the sovereignty of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. We have internalized our oppression. Consequently, it is also the mission of White Buffalo Calf Women's Society to support each other in our exploration of ourselves and the attachment to our own beliefs that justify our own oppression against the oppression of others. I think that's a really crucial piece that I find fascinating within our philosophy of the organization. As we work to transform the world into a circle of peace and harmony, individual responsibility and self-growth is essential. As Indigenous people, we have survived and held on to much of our tradition. In keeping with our culture, we are expected to conduct ourselves ethically, and as employees of White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, we expect to interact with each other in the spirit of unity and mutual respect. So that's a beautiful piece that is, when we're talking about modernizing our traditional context, that's right into our policy. And so we can use this as a guide as we move forward and make decisions, whether it's with funding, whether it's with implementation, or whether it's with sustainability aspects of programs or activities that we've started or are maintaining or are planning for. White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, it's really unique, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. And the fact that it's one of the very few organizations that provides 24/7, 365 direct services to the most marginalized people of our communities, which are women and their children who have faced victimizations from domestic violence. And many of the challenges that those barriers bring to our community. The direct services, getting into what we directly provide with our community and our relatives that we serve there. Under the guide of the organization's philosophy and mission statement, they're very invaluable, the services that we provide. We provide crisis counseling and hotlines. Of course, we have the shelter here in town, here in Mission, where we have 36 beds that are available and up to a 90-day stay, which I think is actually pretty pretty long considering comparing to other shelters. I know Wavy and Rapid was a month, and they moved down to 2 weeks. So they might have other resources in the community that they can connect to our relatives with to provide ongoing care or housing. We lack those resources here. And so I believe most of the relatives that come in do take advantage of 90 days. And we always want to encourage that, regardless of what that looks like, but they're free to make their decisions. And so we promote their personal sovereignty as well. We also have services of daycare and transportation. So if a relative wants to participate in something a program has to offer, or another support group that maybe we have, our advocates are able to provide her daycare for those sort of specific targeted reasons. And transportation, which is a huge issue, but we're always, everyday advocates are taking our relatives in the community to take those steps to create and define their own success and practice their own idea of self-determination and sovereignty and what that looks like for them as survivors of domestic violence. We have a variety of support groups, and they're culturally tailored to meet the needs of our Oyate. We provide advocacy, which includes legal, medical, housing, again, transportation, clothing, and personal advocacy. We also provide information and referrals, whether it's to local resources, and even, I think very important, is mental health counseling. And I could see that's gonna benefit our community greatly. I think everybody could take advantage of that. We also provide assistance in filing compensation claims, and moreover, culturally based healing opportunities through experience versus the idea of just the activity. We want to really talk about it being an experience. We also have a coordinated monthly SRT team meeting that we're responsible for organizing. And we also have a sexual assault response team. So just this morning, Christine had made the new schedule for what that looks like. So we always have an advocate who's been trained in sexual response on call, and they answer when they need to. But I think most importantly, the work that we provide is that relationship aspect to the relatives that we serve. When we work as advocates, as Lakotas and as indigenous people, we're all about relationships. Whether it's our kinship, whether it's with each other, the land, the environment, our four-legged relatives, even the greater concept of that daku shkan, that greater energy or cosmos. We're all about relationships. So some of the most powerful work that we do, I believe, or I feel, is creating a safe space and letting our relatives know that we're here for them. We would never judge them, and we're here to support them in their own decision-making, what they want to do, and not trying to tell somebody what they need to do. So I kind of combined that last little part of the letter I got. This is where we get to the money part. No, just kidding. My Buffalo Calf celebrated our 40th anniversary last year in 2018. 40 years now. This program has been there providing services directly to the most marginalized of our people. And moving forward, part of the vision is to strengthen and protect. Wocekiye Eyapi. These two central concepts I continually go back to in both my personal and professional space. So in moving forward and planning and implementing, those are two concepts. How do we strengthen and protect? How can we strengthen and protect every step of the way? White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, we currently balance 9 different funding sources, 4 federal, 4 state, and 1 private foundation from the Noble Foundation. As we move forward, I believe, and thankfully Janet, the previous ED, she really left us in a good spot financially. The amount of work and dedication and knowledge that she put in to take care and be mindful of the reality of the community and how the organization can respond to that We're in a really good space to where we have a little bit of flexibility to be creative and go out and seek private funding sources away from the federal dollars, which is, I know, is a scary concept at times. As White Buffalo Calf Women's Society, we're a nonprofit affiliated and recognized by the Rosebud Sioux tribe, but we are independent. And we want to strengthen notions of true sovereignty and self-determination. For our society, this is at an organizational level. We can develop those innovative and creative economic sovereignty sources. Again, really trying to get away from those federal dollars and what that looks like. You know, I feel with the tribe, there is a place for that, and there is a process to have that inherent right to get those federal dollars. We negotiated with our lands to get those. But as a nonprofit, and in particular, the way our organization is intended for, I don't feel like we need to be a ward of the federal government anymore. So right now, with the previous ED, she left us in a good, solid, secure place financially, although we do have some more grants coming up that we assured her this morning that we would move forward. It's actually stuff she created, so we just have to go in and edit. So like, thanks, Jan. We don't have to do too much work. But no, we're working hard. In the coming 2 months before the next upcoming reporting period, we do have some time to meet with organization. One that we're excited about looking towards in Rapid is Indian Collective. And I don't know if you guys have heard of that organization, but I would recommend look it up and see. And so on their website, I think it's headed by Nick Tilson, who was Thunder Valley's previous director. And that's their goal, is to help defend and decolonize Native organizations. So we're going to have a meeting with him in February that we're excited about, and the Vikirovich Foundation. So we're excited about those two opportunities coming up. So the idea of defending, developing, and decolonizing through our funding aspects, programming, and implementation of funds, and in particular, those creative systems. A big thing that I'm sure we all agree with is how can we develop our staff? How can we build our staff's capacity? Because right along with the relatives that we serve, I see a space for our staff. Because the majority, if not 100% of our staff, have faced those same issues that the relatives we serve, and it kind of draws us to that work. So I really want to be mindful as we move forward, and it's kind of difficult with federal dollars to do that, to match with your staff along the way with what services you provide. An interesting thing that we will be implementing is having a staff Inipi, starting off kind of slow once a month. We were talking about it Thursday afternoons. I don't ever like to plan stuff on Fridays, so we're thinking about Thursday afternoon for that. So of course, always strengthening and protecting the collaborations and partnerships that our tribal programs offer. We're actively revisiting those partnerships in this transition process to see where programs can help alleviate gaps in service, and also again, through shared leadership, the concept of Wocekiye Eyapi, strengthening and protecting each other. So as an organization, we will reach out, initiate, and work hard to streamline services that programs offer, but I also implore directors and tribal leadership and staff of programs to work out to us as well, and we'll respond immediately. Those are some of the bigger pictures of how we can create better partnerships and services. I would like to add, we will be writing and creating a comprehensive document to bring to tribal leadership to request for funds, in particular, to be used for creating the idea of creating specific positions with those funds, such as a CFO, and it's going to throw me off, and a part-time or full-time maintenance position. The organization has really grown to that capacity that we really need those positions. So I think in creating that document, it will be something that is like palpable. Like you could see that no matter who you're sharing that with, you know where those dollars are going through, and it's going to be consistent. In closing, I'd like to thank you for your time and listening. I always remember Gaka Albert Whitehat sharing the knowledge that the most important thing you can give to a person is your time, because it's not something you can ever get back. So I'd like to thank our leaders here and throughout the week for organizing this event. This is a big forum to hold, and we don't have a lot of these larger forums in our community. And so this is one of the unique times that we get to come together like this, and I wish we had more. So I always look forward to participating and seeing everybody at the Wocekiye this weekend. And I truly believe that none of us make it unless we all make it. So, Wopila Ikiciyuskinpi. Thank you.
Lindsay Wopila. Janet, Wocekiye Eyapi, Nishnale Takushnishni, Woglakapi. Sitting here this week and going through these forums, really pleased to see the large number of Stanley University graduates who are working in these programs. That's what our founders wanted. Certainly that's why I put in 47 years here as the president, and it's really gratifying to see the continued development of who we are and the support that this institution has from the community in sending their children and grandchildren to be educated here. And Janet here is an example. Thank you.
I have to say I'm a very proud graduate of Sicangu University. Received my bachelor's here many years ago, but I learned so much. I'm also adjunct professor right now for the Human Services Department, teaching criminal law, which I'm really excited about because it's also playing into the work I'm doing right now. I was hired by the tribal court at the direction of the tribal leadership to make some changes to our criminal code under the Tribal Law and Order Act and under the Violence Against Women Act. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what it means to our community. I did and certainly respect the views of individuals that locking people up is not the answer to justice in our community. It's not necessarily justice to the victims either, and I'm sorry, I'm an advocate. I will always be an advocate, so maybe I'm not going to apologize for that. But as the former prosecutor here, I also know what happens to individuals in our community that are victims of crime, whether it's vandalism, whether it's sexual assault, domestic violence, and that victims often need a voice. So I will always be a voice in that way. We are impacted, like so many of our leaders have talked about, and kind of in the crux of, you know, how do we work with the modern judicial system versus how we would do that traditionally. And I think one of the biggest uphill battles we have is the basic assimilation of our people, because what happens as traditional people, if we had a man in our community that sexually assaulted a woman, that man would no longer be in our community. That's, you know, not what we did. And even families would support that. And often what we see now And I could tell you, victims see this every single day, where our families and our tioshpayes stick up for the individual that has committed a crime, threaten victims, harm victims, instead of saying, hey, brother, sister, niece, nephew, what are you doing? This is unacceptable. And it causes problems. And so in order to fill those gaps, we've adopted this modern system of our judicial response to harms against individuals in our community. We need justice in our community, and I really believe that we need alternative sentencing. Robert was sitting here and he left, but I was going to tell him, you know, and we've talked about it, you know, what are those alternatives to sentencing? So let me tell you what TILOA is. TILOA is a federal law that was passed to bring up the amount of time that people can be convicted or sentenced to in a tribal community. Since the 1980s, it was 1 year. Tribes could only convict and hold an individual in a tribal facility for 1 year. When TILOA was passed in 2010, it allowed that to go up to 3 years, but not unless the tribe adopted it. The Rosebud Sioux tribe supports that, but along with supporting that, we have to change our tribal law and order code to reflect that. Right now, for the most serious crime in our community, and that includes child sexual assault, aggravated assaults, even when you cause major injury, kidnapping. I mean, our major crimes, the most an individual can sit within our tribal facilities is a year. And that's why we often have the federal government coming in, the FBI, U.S. attorneys, our people being sent off to federal prisons and being charged with federal crimes that follow them for the rest of their lives, is because we did not have the ability to be able to do that for ourselves. So I look at TILOA as an extension of our sovereignty, that we as tribal members can make a decision about how long someone can sit in a tribal facility for committing a crime, and that'll be 3 years with a $15,000 fine. And I know the tribal government had a discussion about this, council had a discussion about this, because we are a community of people that don't have a lot of resources. But right now our fines are set at $5,000. And when I went back and I was talking to the prosecutors and public defenders and judges, I said, how long has it been since you heard anybody having to pay a $5,000 fine? And only one person that had been there for a really long time said, I've seen it once. So the judges take into consideration what our people can pay, you know, and paying those fines also helps to support our judicial system. With this government shutdown, our 638 contracts, we contract from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all of these different services, including paying for our officers, paying for our judges, you know, all these administrators having to make up, try to make up what would be the most important roles within those systems. Imagine if those dollars were gone tomorrow. Those dollars pay for all of our judges. Those dollars pay for all our police department. I mean, those dollars paid to incarcerate those individuals in our jails. I mean, those $638 pay for a tremendous amount of services that we get. And I do believe that's an extension of just what Lindsay said. You know, our ancestors' blood are on the ground and our land was taken. But it still creates a dependency upon the federal government. So I believe we have a right to federal dollars. And I've worked with Sarah, continue to work with Sarah on CTAS to make sure that we have and we're taking advantage of those dollars that are offered to us, but it still leaves us dependent. And that's a very scary place to be. So TLOA will allow us to do that. We're also, the tribe did apply for and received a grant to allow us to be able to put information, criminal information, into a system called TAP. TAP hooks up with all different types of federal criminal databases and also state databases. Up until maybe 2 years ago, the tribes were even denied the right to get into a national crime database. You had to be, and you still do, you have to be, and right now, only the police department has that. Every state and federal agency that's law enforcement has the ability to be able to tap into these systems. So if one of our tribal cops happens to stop somebody, they can look into the system and they could see the history of that individual. Is that officer going to be safe when they're going to walk up to a car? Right now, they really don't have that ability. It also protects women or individuals that have protection orders. You could put that into the system. Now, we do have limited ability right now, but this is a direct link with these state and federal databases. The tribal government is currently making up their mind about what kind of information should go in there. Domestic abuse charges, sexual assault charges, child abuse and neglect charges, because we also want officers and our social services programs to be able to make quick decisions about where our children are being placed if they're taken from their family in an emergency situation, in abuse and neglect situations. These are hard decisions for us to make as a community. You know, we are used to being isolated. Anybody that gets a background check, you know, they fingerprint you, and you usually get fingerprinted for both federal and state, but not really the tribe. And that work is expensive. It costs a lot of staff time. This will allow the tribe to be able to get these backgrounds within a couple of hours and not to have to spend the kind of money that they spend giving all these different agencies, because they do them anyway, sending them off to the state agency or to a federal agency for fingerprinting, you know, can cost anywhere between $45 and $75 per person. We can do this for $11, or the tribe can actually earn some revenue and you know, charge other agencies a little bit more to use this system. So we're working right now currently with law enforcement, with probation officers, with the Attorney General's office, with corrections, with social services, to see who's going to put information in there, what kind of information is going to go in there. And I have to be honest with you, the people that have had objected to this, it has all been about DUIs. So, and I understand it. You know, we are going to change the laws here on DUIs. They're already drafted. Pat Donovan had drafted it for the court. It hasn't gone through council yet, but it is one of our biggest crimes. DUI and domestic violence are our biggest crimes on this reservation, and drugs now too. But when an individual is driving around intoxicated and putting the rest of the public at danger, in danger, because of their choice to get behind the wheel, whether it's drug-induced or alcohol-induced, you know, you put other people's lives at risk. So if you want your information, or you know, the fear is that if you drive off the reservation, you've already got a couple of DUIs here, you drive to Rapid City, drink and drive, that the state of South Dakota can then charge you habitually, and you're looking at prison time. So that's been a concern. We certainly recognize that. And again, it's really up to tribal council about what's going to go into this system. So we're working on that also. The Violence Against Women Act in 2013, for the first time, federally recognized our inherent right to protect. It's very limited, but to be able to protect Native women or Native men within our communities who have been victims of domestic violence by a non-Indian. We've been limited by the federal government in charging, arresting, and incarcerating non-Indians in a criminal jurisdiction, and so we're adopting that. And just so you have a little bit of understanding, though, this individual, this non-Indian, must either reside here or work here, and the victim has to be Native. So, and we can only charge them with domestic violence. I did see the draft for 2018 VAWA where they're trying to expand those crimes to include sexual assault, assault on a police officer, child abuse. Because a lot of tribes that have already adopted this, when a cop rolls up on the scene and there's been an issue with domestic violence, there may be some child abuse going on. He may have kidnapped her. There could be sexual abuse within that relationship. But tribes' hands are tied by federal law, and currently they're not allowed to charge that non-Indian with any of those other type of ancillary crimes. That may change in the future, but we are going to adopt, and the tribe does want us to adopt, the ability to be able to charge individuals, non-Indians, when they assault natives within our jurisdiction. And that's huge. It stopped VAWA from being passed for a really long time because the United States Congress is like, I don't know about, Indians charging non-Indians. But that's something, we began with and then was slowly taken away from us. So, the ability us to really provide justice for all victims, and it doesn't matter who the perpetrator is really important piece to giving some resolve and peace for victims in our community. So I'm really excited to be part of this, and as I'm teaching this criminal law class, having my students be part of this process too. It's also incorporating some laws. So right now we don't have a dating violence law, although we do have victims who don't have a child with somebody, who are not necessarily married to them and maybe never have lived with them, but have been assaulted or been involved in domestic violence. And right now our tribe doesn't recognize that, and normally they just get charged like with the simple assault, rather than recognizing that pattern of behavior when it comes to domestic violence in our community. So we will be incorporating that, also human trafficking. I'm meeting with the criminal investigators every other week just to talk about what other types of crimes we need. Cyber crimes are huge here. Being threatened on Facebook or by email communication, things like that. There shouldn't be anybody that should have to tolerate those kinds of threats in a public forum, but we don't have a current law on that. I know the AG's office is working on changing our laws for our gun ownership. Eric Antwine, the tribal attorney, is in current readings with the tribe to change our elderly abuse code. So we have different groups all over the reservation that are working on changing our codes. Sicangu Child and Family Services have been working almost 2 years with a lot of different community members, attorneys, judges, in changing our children's code to really reflect us as Lakota people, incorporation of our Lakota language, our values, and how we treat our children that are in the system. Those children that are be taken from their homes because of abuse and neglect, and integrating our practices and our recognition of what that family means and what it should look like and what kind of services can we provide locally. I know the education department has also been working on revising the education code. AG's office has been revising the land use code. So we've got a lot of work around the laws that govern us as people. And a lot of people in our community are really invested in that. So I'm really excited to be part of the process. I encourage anybody that has suggestions or just wants to talk about this as a community member, if you want me to go to you know, your community meetings, so we can have a larger discussion about it, to please call me at the courthouse, and I'd be more than willing to be there, because it is a community conversation, so I'm trying to have that as many places as I can, because I am not making the decisions about what types of laws we have. This is input from law enforcement, courthouse staff, community members. How should we change our laws? We don't have to sit with what has been given to us. Our current code was developed in the early 80s. And like what Robert said, it really mirrors the state of South Dakota. We don't have to have it be. Alternative sentencing is out there, but I can't do that by myself. So I really do need the community input, and you know, I try to be as central as possible to that. So I'm really excited that I was able to attend. Judge Marshall sends his apologies. He always goes to Flandre on Thursday, so he wasn't able to make it. And again, if anybody would like to invite me to talk to your group or sit down and talk to me as a member of our society, you know, please give me a call, and I'd be more than willing to help. So thank you very much.
Janet Wopila. As one who also sat 14 years on a tribal council, glad to hear all these codes being updated, but that is a lot of work. Next. Lloyd, is that you? Okay. Lloyd Guy, the interim Attorney General for the tribe.
Just a quick update here. I don't believe this was talked about this morning during the treaty discussions, but I just got a text that says the Rapid City Journal reports that Trans-Canada Corporation has applied for 3 permits to withdraw water from the Cheyenne, Bad, and White Rivers. South Dakota's Department of Environment and Natural Resources has recommended approval of the permits. Free water again. The State Water Management Board is scheduled to consider the applications on March 6th. The question is, do we have tribal representation dealing with this? So, got a huge water deal going on, folks.
Good afternoon. It's difficult to follow someone like Janet Routson, who does an excellent job wherever she is. The Attorney General's office is grateful for her assistance and her help over the years. So I just wanted to start and acknowledge that. I want to start off by introducing myself. Like he says, my name is Lloyd Guy. I am the interim Attorney General. I'm originally from Omaha, and I've been working here almost 6 years. I started at the Children's Court as a presenting officer, worked about 5 years there, and then I moved to the AG's office. I've also taken several classes at SGU. My first class was a peacemaking class that was taught by Ms. Antoine. And it was very enlightening for me to take the classes, and I think I've taken every class Ron Hutchinson's ever taught here. So it kind of helped me in kind of sitting in a classroom with the community, because, you know, traditionally I hadn't been to an Indian college. I had gone to Creighton University, calling a bunch of professors father that didn't know my mother. It was a little strange for me. So a little bit about what the Attorney General's office does, and before I get too much into it, I want to speak to the comments that were just made regarding the water rights and the pipeline. Just in case some of you aren't aware, the KXL is under a court order not to proceed with any activities until everything along the route has been examined. Everything's been contemplated, the cultural disturbances, our treaty rights. They're prohibited specifically from moving forward and doing things. Just recently in the last few days, they've communicated to our TECRO office, the people who build the man camps, looking for people to work. That's something they're not supposed to be doing, and we're looking into that and basically seeing if we can talk to NARF, who's representing the tribe, about filing for basically for sanctions, for the court to tell KXL you can't be doing this. So a lot of the members of the legal team of the Rosebud Sioux tribe were on it. Eric's on it. I'm on it. We have meetings every couple of weeks with NARF to discuss our legal strategies. And I would encourage the public, if you see any activities happening, if you see someone hauling pipeline-type pipe, I would suggest calling the TIPO office, call the Attorney General's office and let us know. That stuff's not supposed to be happening. So I want to encourage everyone, before I get into the spiel about what my office does and what I see for the future for SGU for the next 50 years. Because I think that's one of the things that we're talking about here today is where do we go from here? What is the next step? So what does the Attorney General's office do? The Attorney General's office is responsible for quite a bit of things. We supervise the prosecutors. We kind of make sure that, any questions that come up, I address those as best I can. And, if it talks about involving writing codes, we've been working with Janet on revising the criminal code. We've been working on the land and use codes. We've been working with TECRO, TIPO, SOLO, and other organizations about establishing fine structures. I've been working with the Revenue Department for licensing issues, people who are doing business here but they're not paying taxes or filing taxes. That's something that historically the Attorney General's office hasn't had a lot of involvement in, but that's something we're working toward, and that we believe is a true exercise of our sovereignty, is if we can start enforcing these tax situations, licensing. Because part of getting a tribal license is that you have to abide by the laws. And if you're going to do things like pollute our land without a permit, we want to be able to fine you for that, because the land and the water is something we can't get back. Once that resource is depleted, what's that? We learned from talking before, you build this pipeline and all these other things, once the water's gone, you can't drink the money you're making, right? You can't drink the oil. So what's left? Sorry, I kind of get on a soapbox when you're talking about these things and the pipeline, and rest assured, we're on it. So we help rewrite codes. We work with the different programs. I have communities that come to the office with legal questions, and we try and help out the different communities, the different tribal programs that come looking for advice. Let's see, also responsible for background investigations. Janet talked a little bit about the TAP program. It stands for Tribal Access Program. Our background investigations office will be able to help with that. So I believe the cost is pretty minimal compared to what's being paid to these state agencies. So we believe that's pretty important. So the prosecutor's office. one of the missions of Mary Wynn when she was the Attorney General was to basically make our prosecutor's office kind of more representative of the public that it serves. More tribal members, not just, lawyers from somewhere else, and I speak as a lawyer from somewhere else, representing. We have 4 of our tribal members who have passed the Sicangu Oyate bar exam, who are in our office. And they help out in various roles. We have a victim witness coordinator, which we recently got, and we didn't have one before I got here. We had one at Winnebago, where I worked before. Recently, we got a grant, a CTAS grant that Janet and Sarah and all the folks at SRD had helped us get, where we're going to be able to hire a couple of caseworkers to help with the victim witness coordinator. We're going to be able to engage some of our community members, some of our elders, when we're talking about traditional wellness and traditional healing, because that's been absent. That was absent pretty much at the JDC until Miss Gu and those guys started having sweats and different things and ceremonies out there. We just need to continue with that. I think it's painfully obvious it isn't enough. And again, it kind of goes with the assimilation that's happened. And it's just something that we need to work on. Those positions will be advertised soon. As you know, with the shutdown, it's kind of difficult for us to keep moving forward with the progress, but rest assured we are going to move forward. What do we need as a community? We need more college graduates. We need more college graduates who are willing to take on advanced studies as well. We need more people to go to law school. Bo Bearshield was here. He's a great example of a tribal member who's gone to law school and come back. He works in our children's court as a presenting officer. I met Janet my first year of law school. Janet was getting ready to graduate law school. And she's been a fine example, and ever since I've been here, every time I've needed something from Janet, I could always call Janet and depend on her. But she's already had her say today. One thing I'd like to see, and I mentioned this at the commemoration of the Fort Laramie Treaty last summer, was that I think we need to be more in our social work program. We need to train more advocates, because social work is one aspect, but one thing that a social worker from here needs to be well conversant in and be able to go into court and advocate is ICWA. We aren't equipped to go into courts as social workers to do that. I think that's just something we need to work on. And we do have a program here at SGU that Ron Hutchinson does where it prepares people to take the SOBA bar exam. They have one day to kind of go through practice tips, how to do an opening argument, how to do a closing, This took 3 years. We're not going to teach it in a day. So I think as we move forward, we should look at expanding those, and I'm willing to help out wherever needed to help get some of those things across, because there are things that you're just not going to learn in a book. Sometimes you learn by doing. I think what we can do also is we can work on creating internships within the prosecutor's office, perhaps within the public defender's office, where people can get hands-on experience in working on these things. It's one thing to say I passed an exam. Great. Now, what is it like to represent a client, to talk to somebody, to advocate for that person? I have kind of a dream too that we establish a relationship with law schools here. There's no reason we can't really set up our own law school here. We can partner with law programs like Michigan State, Arizona State, USD. I don't know if any of you know Frank Pommersheim. He's retiring this year. And honestly, I never thought he'd retire. But I believe he had taught here at one point, right? He worked at Dakota Plains, I believe, as well. Frank Pommersheim is legendary. If you could get somebody like that willing to work on this, I don't know if he wants to retire, but that would be somebody that could help us get the ball rolling if we really mean it when we say we want a law school. You know, work with Haskell, work with the existing framework of what we have. There's no need to recreate the wheel. All we got to do is convince professors from Michigan State to do a semester here. They've got a great Indian law program. If you ever seen Turtle Talk online, check it out, read it. There are topics. I get educated weekly just by pulling up a link, and they always send you these reminders of this court case, that court case, and what it means. So I think that's what we could do going forward in the next 50 years. Is, you know, we're supposed to be charged with looking after the next 7 generations, right? Well, 50 years will get us halfway through the next 7, won't it? I don't know how long a generation is. But I think we can do that. I think we can get there. It's just we need to have the political willpower and the resolve. So, one thing I'm excited about is, and I'll leave you with this, is, you know, we have this drug problem. We hear about it. We read it on Facebook daily. One thing that the prosecutor's office is working with the CIs on is basically looking at our exclusion statutes, where we can exclude non-members. If we've got a non-member here who's dealing, that's hurting our community. We need to seriously look at it. And you know what? We were supported in the last exclusion case. We were supported by the federal district court here. It acknowledges our right to do that. And that, I submit, is also an exercise of our inherent sovereignty. We can do that. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak today, Dr. Bordeaux. I appreciate the invitation. And I want to throw this out there. If anybody wants to come and discuss any of these things with me, the number to the office is 747-2900. Call up, make an appointment. I'm always happy to sit and talk about things. It might even improve my own understanding of things. I'm not above learning. Yes, sir. I am familiar with it. They send me emails endlessly because I sent a thing saying it would be interesting. I think it's something also worth pursuing at the University of Oklahoma. They've got a master's program there. I would encourage you to look at it, especially if you're a non-lawyer. I considered it, but I've already been through law school. So once you've worked 5-6 years here, you're kind of... I think the work that would be available for that kind of graduate would actually be probably in the Attorney General's office. Certainly, I think within political affairs, I think that person could be equipped to lobby. You know, council hires lobbyists to go up to peer for us. I think if we had our own tribal members who were equipped to be lobbyists, I think that could do that. I think that position, in fact, I think any sort of graduate program, I think our tribal members are well versed in what our reality is here. They can go up and advocate for us. It just takes a specific kind of training, but you get it just by doing, I think. Are there any questions while I'm up here? I know they weren't taking questions earlier, but he raised a couple good questions, and I want to give everyone else the opportunity. Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Yeah, our next area of development chapter, as we've talked about, needs to address every aspect of our daily life. And certainly, law is in there. and we've talked to Palmersheim, and he wants to be involved in our development of a law program here. I'm glad to hear the other recommendations along those lines also. Thank you. One area that we also badly need here is in the area of consumer. There's just so many things that our people need to know in dealing with finances and other aspects of consumer advocacy that needs to be done here. Yeah, I was looking forward to bringing Bo up here. Very proud of that young man, as we're very proud of Sherman Marshall. Sherman was one of our graduates. He made it possible for us to be the first baccalaureate accredited institution of higher learning amongst tribal colleges. After he received his AA, we were able to get a baccalaureate going, and he was the student. And we had one student who graduated with his bachelor's degree. That was Sherman Marshall. Of all the tribal colleges that we had in the country, and we have 35 now today, but at that time, I don't know, we were probably having maybe 15, 16 or something in the country. But he was a very historic individual. He's the first baccalaureate graduate in tribal higher education across the country. And he went to go to law school, and he went to law school, and he completed, and we were all so very proud of him, we wanted to showcase him. So we gave him a vice presidency when he returned from law school to show other students in the community that a graduate from St. Leonard University can go on to become a lawyer or that professional rank. And now we've had others, Janet and the Reynolds, can't think of her first name right now, but Janelle Reynolds. So we've had others who've graduated with law, but that's an area that is definitely vitally needed. And not just, I used to serve on a Native American Rights Fund for 6 years. Very good friends with John Echohawk, the director. And he was telling us one time at the 40th anniversary of NARF that just about every area of tribal law, whether it's in water, whether it's in the cultural arts, you name it, is under review somewhere in our nation's capital. There's a group that is studying it and reviewing it. And he said, one by one in the future, these are going to be attacked. And there's going to be an effort to remove them or to minimize them. And he said, the tribal colleges, you need to get involved with law. You need to train people in the area of law, but also legal education for your tribal members. They may not be seeking a degree in academic advancement, but they need to have an understanding of what's coming so that they can be supportive and they can be on top of it and they can hold their officials accountable in terms of resisting and being able to create a strong foundation. I remember years ago when we were pursuing tribal college legislation in Washington, D.C., and as I mentioned here, something so simple as that took us 6 years before we were able to get tribal college legislation. The things that we had to endure and the obstacles that were there really were eye-opening up. But I remember one evening sitting, and this gentleman come up to me, introduced himself. He was an attorney for one of the federal agencies in the area of water rights. And I always remember what he said. He said, Lionel, I really hate to go and address water rights for tribal nations. And he said, it's an area that you so badly need help with. And right now, he said at that time, this is back in the mid-70s, he said, you do not have the properly trained people to be able to stand up for water rights. He said, I wish I were on your side and was defending. He said, there's just so many things that, he said, to go up against the people who represent tribes at that time, he said it was almost like taking candy away from a kid. He said that's how inadequately trained and lack of knowledge that lawyers have at that time regarding tribal water rights. And I've always thought, that's another area that awaits our development. Okay, the next one, who we have down the line here. Can you come forward and introduce yourself, and thank you for coming.
Hello, everybody. I'm Luke Blackbear. I'm with the Rosebud Adult Correction Services, and with me is Carl Hungers, the lieutenant at the adult jail. I myself have the position of captain of the adult jail. As far as the services that the adult jail provides would be, of course, incarceration for violations of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Law and Order Code. We house, inmates, for whatever various crimes they've been committed and they've been convicted for. And our job is to provide a safe and secure environment for, the inmates who are incarcerated and housed at our adult jail. And but in my time at the jail, which hasn't been very long, what I see, and Janet kind of touched on it earlier too, is alternative sentencing for offenders, because anyone who violates a crime, there's a punishment, of course, but there are, with the development of the Law and Order Code and the increase in penalty, which she was talking about, we really need to start thinking about like this alternative sentencing. Maybe like a 24/7 program was one of the, I guess a program that was brought up and that we were talking about developing, as part of alternative sentencing, which I would think would be, would help our tribal members, especially the ones that are, they're in jail or arrested for kind of a lesser crime, maybe a DUI or something, and I guess it for them to sit, months or weeks till their court hearing, it would probably make sense for some type of alternative other than them sitting there. Maybe we could develop some type of 24/7 program, so they can be out with their families instead of just sitting time there. And but one of the areas that we're really focusing on now is re-entry into the communities, which is being our work release. Lieutenant Hunger here is actually in charge of the work release inmates, which, you know, we provide, you know, I guess labor and services to the programs, the different tribal programs. You know, we provide inmate work, you know, and it, you know, through memorandum of agreements for different programs, and it, you know, it works out. You know, it helps tribal members to, you know, complete their sentences and, you know, get out in a, you know, a quicker time, speeds up their sentencing, and it provides, you know, really, you know, help for some of the programs. You know, we've entered into agreements with, you know, a lot of different programs, and, you know, part of our, I don't know if I don't know if Melissa mentioned at the last forum we were at, but you know, the inmates were very helpful in putting together the new arbor for the powwow grounds. You know, that was all a lot of inmate work during that time, but you know, that's what we're mostly trying to focus on is re-entry into the communities. You know, our inmates are, you know, just regular people, tribal members here, you know, that, you know, our family and friends and relatives, and what we're trying to do is, as part of this re-entry program, is provide, you know, life skills, you know, get them, you know, working at these different programs. Maybe they can develop life skills, which will help them to maybe stay, you know, out of trouble. But which is the main goal, is to keep people out of trouble and out of jail, and that you know, I think it's coming along great. You know, we're, like I said, we're adult corrections, so that's our job, is to correct, you know, provide corrective behavior structured environment for people who are incarcerated. But I think our re-entry program, you know, the further along we get into it, I think it's becoming a that would be more of our focus, you know, as to helping our tribal members, like I said, to develop a life skill in order to keep them from getting themselves in trouble, and, you know, hopefully finding a job, and, you know, helping their own families and staying out of trouble. And yeah, I mean, that's basically all the services that we provide. We, like I said, just a safe and secure environment for people who are incarcerated, you know, who happen to be, you know, get in trouble, violate the law. But, and I guess that's it. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Well, it's kind of always been there, you know, like the inmate work and everything, but I mean, the way we're going about it, you know, I think it's different because, you know, I've been a police officer for a long time. I mean, the last almost a little over 18 years now, I've been a police officer, so my job has been really just to get them there, you know what I mean? Just to get them there was my only job, just to get them there. But now, you know, working with the jail, working at the jail, and with the inmates, I see that there's a need to help them, you know, to stay out of trouble, because a lot of them, you know, their home life, there's no structure, you know, and to help them obtain a life skill, like, you know, help them work maybe, for example, maybe the forestry program, you know, help them learn how to run a chainsaw, you know, something simple, you know what I mean? I mean, help them in their life develop a life skill so that they can stay out of trouble. And that's the way I see it now. Like I said, working with the jail has changed my mind a bit. But one of the issues too that I've seen in working with the jail, which of course we have limited, you know, resources and everything. We depend on IHS for our medical and also like our mental health. And working in the jail, you know, I've seen that mental health issues are kind of a problem too. That, you know, there's a lot of tribal members who have, you know, mental health issues that really need services, you know, better services, more services than, you know, than we can provide. And that's an issue too that I've seen in working at the jail, is mental health issues.
How would you say homelessness fits in with what you're talking about, people that you're serving to get through hot homelessness?
Yeah, well, you know, it providing someone, you know, a house basically for a few months is really not ideal for us, you know what I mean? We'd rather, but, you know, a lot of the tribal members, sometimes that's the way they go, just due to, the alcoholism rate on this reservation is pretty high. And, to correct that also, the drug and alcohol treatment program, they also, provide services for us too. They come over and they do evaluations, and if somebody needs treatment, they'll try to help us in that way, try to get our inmates treatment. But, like I said, it's just the alcoholism, there's different issues, and we really don't want to be a house for homeless people, but sometimes, they end up getting incarcerated. Housing federal inmates, well, we've recently entered into a contract with U.S. Marshals to house, just like the arrested, they get indicted and they're arrested, and we just house them until they can get to court, to federal court. But with Janet Routzen, with her talking about, increasing the time for incarceration, that is why, and she said the alternative sentencing, that's really been, on our minds, out to the jail now, is alternative sentencing, especially like the 24/7 program. If that could be developed tribally, now that would be something that would really keep, a lot of tribal members out of jail. They might have committed a crime, but, and you're talking about us housing, like housing for federal crimes, is that what you're talking about? Well, they're basically how we are too, we'll house them until it's their arraignment date, until they can get to the federal magistrate. But as far as, if there's an increase in penalty, then that would be ideal for, all tribal members, because, a great deal of tribal members here have had, family members who have been incarcerated federally, myself included. And it's a big strain on people's family, man. Having people their family members bounced around from, federal prison in the Bureau of Prisons system. It'd be better for us to house, our own tribal members, for the various crimes, instead of having them off somewhere else, Bureau of Prisons. On average, we just did we always have to do the monthly average, and I think we've been going in the mid to high 90s a month. But the original build of that jail, I think, was 160, and that got surpassed, and so now they increased bed space, and now it's 220. It can house 220 now, but they surpassed the original occupancy rate at 160. Well, I guess while I'm up here, whatever, we had a tribal member come up and speak to Carl and myself, and she had a question. I guess it was maybe for a prosecutor's office. She had a question about her, she was saying she had a question of how, she said her son, daughter was arrested, and the police officers brought her grandchildren to her, which she said she don't mind. She thinks that's great that the cops, placed them with family first, other than try to go to the state DSS. But she just wanted to know how it could be streamlined, if there's a streamlined process on how to get like the temporary guardianship, because she said that they last for like only a year or something, and like she said her family member was incarcerated for more than a year, and she was wondering if there was a more streamlined process for that. Full custody, like emergency full custody. Because she was saying that like every year that she has to renew these documents or something, she says. Okay. Well, I guess that was all I had to say because she stopped us and asked us about it. She said, well, I'll replay it on YouTube if you guys ask the question for me. So we'll ask the question. All righty. Thank you.
Luke, Carl, thank you. And I personally want to thank Carl. 2 years ago, I was involved in what they told me was a 3.5 car rollover south of St. Francis. And a woman come across the road and about 4 or 5 car lengths ahead of me, and it was going to be a head-on. Not much of a shoulder, but I pulled over. But my car was hit, knocked the left rear wheel completely off, threw me into a skid. But with the safety belt hooks onto the post, hit me in the forehead or the temple and knocked me out, is what the doctors told me. And the force of the slide, I was doing 55, and it jerked the right rear tire completely off the car also. So now I'm in a car with no back tires on, it flattened my right front out, and I went for a roll. And when I come to, the car was upside down sideways. I was on the bottom, and I was in pain. And I tried to reach the seat belt button, but I couldn't reach it. And then I heard a voice that said, who are you? Is anybody else in there with you? Can you, move, get yourself out? I said I couldn't. And so I heard this person tell somebody else, he's got a seatbelt on. So about then, a little while later, I heard that front windshield. Somebody, I don't know what they hit that front windshield with, but boy, it was a powerful force. And they tore the windshield off, and very painful. It was starting to drizzle, and they pulled me out. And Carl was one of them. And I always want to thank you for what you did there. Appreciate that. But I still haven't had corrective surgery. I still have torn up ligament on my left knee. Blood clots set in from my groin to my knee, which I still live with. It pulled my collarbone loose from my chest plate and from the shoulder blade, and also bruised my brain. And so I'm still in recovery with no corrective surgery. But again, I thank you and the ambulance that was there to help me. Pilamaya apelo. That started before that. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, I wanted to I wish I could have caught everybody while they were here. I'm the chair of the Human Services Department at Sinteglashka. And we do have a criminal justice component within our department. And Cheryl Klein's here, and she's been here for many years and trained many a student. And I wanted to point her out and call her out. She said she just didn't want to sit back there and look sharp. She wanted to speak and talk. But one of the things with all these people here, and we didn't get a chance to, and I should have stood up and talked about it, but we would like for you guys to keep criminal justice, human services in mind when you're writing those grants and you're looking at us, so that if there's things we can implement, things that we can work with you on, curriculums and different things that we can design to get people better trained and pull in the staff and the resources that we can here at the university, in an effort to put quality people out there with bachelor's degrees in criminal justice. And we know it's a big field, And I really want to thank Janet for coming on and doing what you're doing with criminal law and some of the other coursework. It's awesome. And Cheryl Klein really likes it too, so it's good. We've seen a jump in our criminal justice students within the Human Services Department. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about with listening to everybody talk from juvenile detention all the way up to adult corrections and people reentering and all these different things that are going on, those have been happening for years. And Lionel, he talked about HBCs, historic black colleges earlier. Right away I thought of Xavier, Morehouse, Wilberforce, Ohio, and Jimmy Cunningham and Felicia Whittington and some of the people I met over the years when we were part of a program called Family Life Center. So when I got into Family Life Center, Janet Routson was the director at that time, and they hired me in as a prevention specialist. And I didn't realize it till later, but we were doing a study. So for 5 years, we took what would be considered the most at-risk youth on this reservation. They had to be on parole, they had to be on probation, they had to be expelled, they had to be suspended, and we took them in. And so what we did with years of honing our skills and pre and post testing, part of this design is what we were supposed to do. It was an alternative school setting. So when they come in there and we sign them up at the beginning of the year, we pre-tested them, okay? And what we had was a violence risk assessment. How violent are you? How depressed are you? You know, we did a Beck depression scale. And then we ran them through a whole year's programming. So every day that youth, that young adult, that relative, when they came in there, we had an hour of academics, an hour of career development. So they learned about careers. There was whole curriculum set in place. We had to design them. We actually had to put all of that in place for a whole school year. So we did careers, talked to them about the different careers that are out there. We also did personal development, and that had to do with anger management, what have you, counseling, therapy, expressing yourself, getting to those raw emotions, group counseling. Whatever we could do to bring in, we were doing that too. So there was personal development, and then we did culture. So they had to learn our culture. So we were in there teaching them the 7 sacred ceremonies. We had Roland Blackpool at that time, I believe, and he passed on, but he came in there and did a lot of the cultural stuff for us. And then we had recreation. So they had to, for an hour, do some kind of recreation. It didn't matter what it was. And a lot of times, young people don't know what to do. And neither did us as a staff. So we were sitting there creating all these things that they could do recreationally. We were bringing people in, putting pro games, whatever we could find. But the point is while they were in that program, they learned about careers. They did their academics and packet work. They did personal development and worked on themselves. They learned about careers. They did recreation. They had to learn how to find other things that were healthy in recreation. And then on top of that, they learned culture, Lakota culture. And that was really cool. But after a while, I mean, you can't teach a whole year of Lakota culture. There's people that can. But, you know, we started to teach them about other cultures as well. And so what happened then in the 5 years that program ran, it started out rough, bumpy. We got a lot of the increases out, but by the time we were in our 4th or 5th year, when the grant was getting ready to close, we had actually perfected, designed, and honed in on an awesome alternative school program that actually won an award for the highest turnaround states in the country. So we pre-tested them on violence assessment, on a Beck depression scale, and there was a few other ones. And then after the whole school year ended, after they went through all the programming, we post-tested them at the end of the year. We had a big summer trip, and I mean, they really did a lot. But then we post-tested them, and comparing those two, we had the highest rates in the country out of all the other family life centers, which was nationwide. And some of the other family life centers were in inner cities. You know, they were from Los Angeles, they were from DC, New Orleans, Ohio, all these big cities, and they were dealing with inner city gang stuff. So I wanted to kind of put that out there and talk a little bit about that. The first is, please keep Human Services Criminal Justice Program in mind when you guys are writing grants, designing, and looking at how we can be a part of that to help train people. And secondly, right now, sitting on a shelf is a perfect alternative school program that has been proven successful across the country, won an award for it. And nobody's using it. So I wanted to bring that out there. That all came up because Lionel talked about HBCs, because the historic black colleges at that time ran that program, and we were fortunate enough to get in there. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that point up and also point to the fact that I think it's really good to catch young people early. The earlier you catch them, the earlier you're working with them, the earlier they're teaching them skill sets and different things, the less likely we're going to see them sitting in the adult system with 220 beds instead of 180. Maybe we'll only need 150. Maybe we'll only need 100. So I'm a firm believer in catching them when they're young and retraining and working with those family systems, because there are a lot of dysfunctional family systems out there. We have a lot of people that are unhealthy, but we're working at it, okay? So I guess that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, you guys.
Yeah, somebody mentioned the need to be mindful of relationships on the reservation and to always be respectful of relatives, be they two-legged or four-legged or winged or what have you. But my apologies, Carl, when I mentioned there, your great-grandfather and my great-grandfather are brothers. So, Wocekiye Eyapi, thank you. But in closing, I want to invite Stanley to come forward and say a closing prayer. But I thank each and every one of you for coming here. And it's just really been a fruitful week. 7 days we prepare. We'll have student staff recognition dinner in here this evening. We'll recognize students for their academic achievement as well as their years working at SGU. Those who reach 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, we recognize them and give them a gift and certificate and what have you, and certainly appreciate those who have come here and selected SGU and have spent that many years believing in what we do and what we're trying to do. So it's been a good week. Tomorrow we'll sit down here again, work with South Dakota State University, develop an MOU with them. We're both land-grant colleges, and there's any number of initiatives that they have and that we want to work with South Dakota State University also. So we're coming together, and then in the afternoon we'll have the crowning of the Miss Sinteglishka, and then tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock we'll start our grand entry in here, and then that will continue at 1 o'clock and 7 tomorrow, or on Saturday, grand entry, and then 1 o'clock on Sunday be another grand entry, and we'll go until we finish, which was normally around 10, 11 o'clock. So we've had a busy 7 days here, a lot of planning the last month, but it's always well worth it because it's our way of giving back to the community for their support of who we are, going on our 50th anniversary here pretty soon. It's a way of giving back with food and the enjoyment of our people coming and dancing, and the stands to be filled with people watching these dances. And it kicks off pretty much the dancing season for a lot of our people. And then they'll go to the Denver March here, and they'll continue throughout the summer and into the fall. But so we've really enjoyed what we're doing here. We picked up a lot of ideas. We have recorders. We have people on YouTube who are watching us throughout the world. And already James Radingleaf submitted some ideas to us because we're soliciting ideas. But in case anybody has a wealthy grandmother or grandpa, tell them to scratch a check for the Sicangu Oyate or for Sinteglishka University, and we'd appreciate it. We'll put it to good use. But now our challenge is for all of us to come together and have follow-up meetings and take these daily areas and begin to come up with a vision and an updated strategic plan, and eventually create a master plan for Sicangu Oyate in every area, and then be able to utilize this as our guidance and funding, and also in strengthening the various stages of our people, whether they're little guys on up to our elders, as well as the ancestors who we continue to pray with and who continue to give us strength as to who we are. Just Stanley lechet kaya na Wocekiye Eyapi wopilat kahechak. We want to thank Roger and Pauline for going with the YouTube throughout the world, and thank all of those relatives. Last a couple years ago we did this, and we had a person from Rosebud call us from Australia. So we have our relatives living throughout the world, and we extend best wishes and good health to all of them, and come home once in a while and visit your relatives here. So, Astelo, Pilamaya, Apolo, Tonalil, Kayuza, Tuktekta, Lenaya, Chipenio, Ahecha, Abatonsna, Wokikiye Eyapi, Tiatak, Yakupo, Hena, Ishalil, Ohomini, Yotani Lapelo, Astelo, Pilamaya, Apelo.
Oh, well, Wopile Chichapelo. I'd like to thank everybody and the speakers today. I liked what I heard. We have to discount some of the superstitious ceremonies that was taking place when this place was discovered. If you're not a Christian, then you must be a savage. If you're a savage, then you have no right to ownership to land. That's what we're dealing with. 1823, Judge Marshall reaffirmed that. To the people on YouTube, Wopilalo, Hoachitokashila, Wopilon Kinija, Behechalwana, Umanicho, Unkigalistampinaha, Taku Ota, Akia Pinaha, Iwanka Pinaha, Hocoka Kia Lena, Hu Ichupinaha, Oyate, Igloash Akapinaha, Ake Ikiciyuskinpi, Chai Jupinaha, Ho Woglakapi, Yuha Ikiciyuskinpi, Ea Chatukpa New Hinijipelo, Wopilalo, Mitaku Yas.